Hey, Rip, we're ready to go now. I'm Colin, and I'm an alcoholic, and I'm real happy to be with you this morning. What I want to talk to you about this morning is the problem that we have. I find that many alcoholics and drug-addicted people do not get well because they simply don't understand what's wrong with them. Okay? Now, I'm a sober person, and I've been sober for a long time, and when I talk with you about sobriety, I do not mean just not drinking or just not drugging. When I talk about sobriety, I mean a status being which is characterized by freedom and happiness. You see, I found a way to live where I can stay high about 95% of the time without the dread of use of drugs and alcohol. It's a very important thing to me. Because of the kind of person that I am, I have to be high on something. Can any of you identify with that? And I'm high on living. I found a way of life that really equally high. And if it didn't, I'd probably still be using drugs and alcohol. Okay? How many of you are alcoholic? You prefer alcohol, okay? How many are drug addicts? Okay, and how many pigs? Now, pigs are people like me, you know, when I call them pigs, be proud to be a pig, okay? A pig is a guy like me who drinks everything too thin to chew and chews the rest out of it, okay? And pigs make it in this program also. Now, I believe, too, that sobriety is a learning process, that we learn how to be sober people. I really do believe that to the soles of my feet. And learning is not a spectator sport. There's no magic in this treatment center. There's no magic anywhere else that's going to fix us. We have to work to recover. And we have to work at least as hard as we work to get where we are right now. Have you ever taken the time to think how hard you have worked to be an alcoholic or a drug addict? Think about that sometime. You know, I remember one time in my life when in my underwear, I stole a bicycle and rode through the snow about 10 miles to a bootlegger's house, you know? That takes strength. Sometimes people say we alcoholics are weak, you know, weak people. That we have weak egos. And we're among the greatest con artists on the face of the earth. We can manipulate and use anybody at any time. All of us can. And people with weak egos can't do that. You're going to hear a lot of things that society says about alcoholics and drug addicts that you're going to find are not true. Okay? So when I talk with you, basically what I'm trying to do is get you to think. I'd like to wind up those rubber bands in your head. Did you know you had them? Any of you had a little model airplane? Did you have one and you wound that sucker up and you let it go and it flew, didn't it? We got them in our head, too. And we need to wind up these rubber bands and get thinking real serious about what is wrong with it, really wrong with it, and how to get well. Now, most of you, if I asked you what your problem was, you would say, and I hope you can see this. If you can, I'll write larger. Your problem is drinking and drugging. Right? That's my problem. You ask an alcoholic what his problem is, he says, I drank too much and I drank too long. And you ask a drug addict, well, drugs are my problem. Are they really? I want you to think about that for just a minute. Are they really a problem? Okay? Why did you use? Because you had to. But why? Why did you drink? Anybody. And why did you use drugs? Anybody. What was the reason? Made you feel good. Right? Isn't that simple? I drank because I wanted to feel good. For some reason, I didn't. And in the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, you'll read in the doctor's opinion where the little doctor said men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. Feeling good. That's why we drink. Had another word for it too, didn't we? Being high. Okay? And the Greeks have a word for it. I really love this word. Euphoria. You know? Every time I hear that word euphoria, I think about a seagull just floating over the ocean, floating over the waves, floating in the breeze, effortlessly, no work, okay, involved, just going where the breeze takes. But we drank to feel good. We use drugs to feel good, to become euphoric, because for some reason we weren't. Now, is feeling good a problem? Anybody? Is it a problem? No, it's not a problem, is it? Feeling good, the effect of alcohol and drugs, is not a problem at all. As a matter of fact, for me, and I suspect for you, it was a solution. Think about it. For some reason, we didn't feel good when we drank and used drugs. We did. And so we kept on using them. Okay? The effect of drugs and alcohol. Very important for us to understand if we're going to understand what is wrong with us to begin with. Okay? Now let's take it a little further. If drinking and drugging are not the problem, what if? Anybody, is it Kenny? Why didn't you feel good? Can you tell me? Or John? Mr. Getsumer. Any of you suffer some guilt? It's quite a suffering, isn't it, that guilt? It's persistent feeling of being wrong. Even when there's no reason for it, you feel like I'm wrong all the time. Any of you ever feel that way? You know? And when you did something well, you felt like you didn't do it good enough, or even when you succeeded, you were a little bit guilty about not doing better. And there's a reason for that. Okay? What other reason wouldn't you feel good? Come on, tell me. Why didn't you feel good in the first place? Why did you have to have alcohol and drugs? Anger. I forgive them. What's another? What? Y'all kidding? Good one. Poor me. Everybody else in the world got something I don't have, and I try to get it and I can't get it. Poor me. Okay? Somebody mentioned loneliness. It's a good one. All by yourself. Even when you go into a bar with 200 people in it, or into a party with 25 or 30 people in it, you feel like you're by yourself. They don't feel like you're by yourself. You know, they try to bring you into the group, but somehow you feel alone. You never feel a part of anything. I didn't. God knows I wanted in, and I tried to get in. But I felt I'm not like them. I'm not like them. I don't fit. Even in my home when I was a kid, you know, my father was a big, tall, good-looking man with coal-black hair. And my mom had dark brown hair, you know. And my sister had dark brown hair. And in the middle of them was me, pretty hair, you know, with a great shock of white hair. And I used to lay around even as a kid and wonder, do I belong here? How did I get here with all these dark people? I just didn't understand it, you know. And I cried about it a lot. And I felt outside. And I felt outside in my classroom. I wasn't like them. You ever feel that way? I'm just not like them. I don't know what it is about me. About mine. Okay? Guilt, anger, self-pity, loneliness. How about depression? Any depressives out there? Pretty bad feeling, you know. You wake up in the morning, you want to pull the covers over your head and put the pillow on because you don't want to go out in the world and be with them. Them, you know. Them who talk about you and don't like it and put you down and are plotting against you. And so you cry right up in your face like this, you know. And pray I'm not going out there and let them get me. Any other reason? Down? Rex? Down is a good one. That falls in the same category of guilt. And right on the bottom down here, and I hope you can see it, may be one of the biggest reasons of all. Fear. Fear. Lots of forms of fear. Always anticipating that we're going to lose something or that we're going to lack something, you know. Getting up in the middle of the night, walking into your child's room or running into your child's room and listening to think your child's breathing. And then when you hear your child breathing, you put your ear on her chest like I used to do if people's heart was beating because you're just curious she was going to die because of the way you were behaving. See, all forms of fear, little worry, little dread, things like that. All the way to fear number 207, I call it. Because I read a book once, and the psychologist listed 206 fears, and I'd had them all. But there's one fear he didn't have in the book. Fear number 207, but we've had it. The fear of impending doom, Kenna. I don't know what's going to happen to me. I don't know where it's going to happen or why or when or who's going to do it, but something's going to happen to me, and it's going to be bad. No way, boy. But you know that, don't you? You really know that. Something is going to happen, and that something is going to be bad. Now, the Franks call that free-floating anxiety, okay? Mine didn't float, folks. Mine was like a stone in my gut, you know? I like what the teenagers say about free-floating anxiety. They say, look at him, he's wired. You know? And I was wired for a long time. That's some kind of fear, isn't it? Now, if I had to put, and we could go on, we could fill up this whole whiteboard with these problems, okay? If I had to put one word on those problems. One four-letter word to describe all those problems. What would it be? Huh? Hurt or pain. Right? Pain. Pain like this. A friend of mine in California says, the first 15 years of my life, I walked around and it was like I had a big hole in the middle of me with the wind blowing through it. And it hurt. A big hole, and it was raw around the edges, and the wind going through it with coals. And he said other people had this hole, and they went and got an education, and it closed. I went and got educated, mine got bigger. Other people had this hole, and they went to church, and it closed. I went to church, and mine got bigger. Other people got into relationships, fell in love, things like that, and the hole closed. I fell in love time after time after time. God, do we fall in love? And the hole got bigger. How many of you can identify with that? Got a hole in the middle of me. And he said, what do you tell anybody when they say, what's wrong with you? Well, you see, I got this hole in the middle with the wind blowing to it. Straight jacket time. But that pretty well described it, doesn't it? An emptiness. You understand? A void that will not be filled. And it grows me a continuing sense of despair. Whatever I thought was going to fill that hole, I went and got it. And once I got it, I didn't want it anymore. I'd say to myself, so what? What's next? There's got to be more here. And I'm a more kind of person, you see. When drinking, if I felt good, I wanted to feel better. And if there was something beyond better, I was going for that. Nothing was enough. Now you got a hole in the middle of you, the wind blowing through it, you got a lot of pain. What do you look for when you got pain? Relief, right? Everywhere. Now you got all the pain in the middle of you, and one day, like me, someone hands you a bottle. And you take a couple of drinks of that flip, or a couple of hits of whatever drug you're doing, and the hole closed. My God, it closed. Never closed before. Nothing has ever done that, And bingo, it's closed. And you're not bored, and you're not lonely, and you're not afraid, and you're not angry, and you're not guilty, and you really feel like you're with them. For the first time in your life, you're satisfied with who you are and who you're with and what you're doing. Did you feel that way? God, that's important, isn't it? You walk around for 10, 15, 20, 25 years with a hole in the middle with the wind blowing through it, and you find a substance that curves you. God, that's important. And you're not even going to begin to understand your alcoholism and drug addiction until you understand the value of alcohol and drugs. Think about it. What's the most valuable thing in your life? What's been the most valuable thing in your life? Tell the truth, not what you wanted it to be. See, I had value. I wanted to be a good person. I wanted to be a good husband. I wanted to be a good father. I wanted to be all those things, and I tried to be those things. But alcohol came first. And you know what happened? Underneath alcohol, all the rest of the values started falling apart. But it was number one and number two were getting it. Never running out. My whole value system was dominated by alcohol and drugs. Well, yours not, be not. We don't like it. We don't intend it to be that way, but it is. How valuable. Remember the first little girl you ever fell in love with? Okay? What was her name? John? First little girl you ever fell in love with? Dorothy? First little boy? Who? D. We ain't got around a lot, folks. Again? Huh? Mickey, you remember the first little... Okay, yeah, bring a picture, okay, genuine. That's important, isn't it? Mine was Sylvia. Sylvia, if you'll remain nameless, okay? Beautiful Sylvia. Blonde hair, olive skin, gorgeous. I was Sylvia's paper boy. And I was one of those paper boys that ride around on your bicycle with, no hands on the bars, folding those papers, hitting those quarters. I carried 400 papers every morning before I went to school. I was good at it, but I didn't throw Sylvia's up on the porch. When I took hers last, and when I got to her house, I parked my bike, and I got off of it, and I lovingly carried her paper up and put it behind her screen door. Now, why did I do that? Because I wanted to see Sylvia. And when I went to school, I sat with Sylvia, and I daydreamed about Sylvia, and I went to bed thinking about Sylvia, and I got up thinking about Sylvia, and I ate my meal thinking about Sylvia, Sylvia, Sylvia. She dominated my life. Y'all remember? And 15 years later, it was alcohol, alcohol, alcohol. That's how important. And see, you don't tell an alcoholic or a drug addict to give up the most valuable thing in their life. Like people used to tell me, you're a nice fella if you just quit drinking. They didn't know how valuable that was to me. They didn't know that without that drug, the hole came up. And I felt like I was going to fly into a million pieces any minute. They didn't know that. And I wanted to say to them, what can you give me to replace it? I've got to have this thing, whatever it is that causes the hole. What can you give me to replace it? And all they could tell me was I needed to quit. No replacement. And I wasn't about to give it up, were you? No, sir. No, sir. And if I hadn't found the replacement I found today, I'd still be drinking and drugging. I'll tell you that now. But I found one. Okay? Very valuable. Now, if all an alcohol and drug did were to relieve that thing, man, miracle. Miracle drug, you know? But that's not all. Anybody have any side effects? You have any side effects like you staggered a lot, and you fell down, and you locked the car, and you drove your car drunk, and you couldn't remember who you were with and what you did, and your family members helped you become a real good liar because the first thing out of their mouth when you walked through the door was, where you been? You know, I used to go out and stay drunk 3-4 days, come home, first word out of my wife's mouth, Tom, where you been? I didn't know where I'd been. But she's my wife, she deserved an answer, so I made up one. Huh? Who were you with? I didn't know who I was with, but I made up an answer, you know? But the last question on her lips always threw me. And it was always the last question. Tom, where's the car? I never do wear the car up, okay? But you see, our family members help us to become good liars by asking all these questions, you see? They don't know that. All right? Side effect. Get into altercations with those guys in blue suits and those long sticks, waking up in those rooms with the bar on, you know? I didn't want to do that. I have a friend that says drunkenness is just a bad side effect of alcoholism. I think he's right. I didn't want to stagger. I wanted to feel good. That's all. Just right. How about this? Any of you have any after effect? Did you vomit a lot? I hate that word. It sounds a lot worse than puke. You know that? Did you try to and could? Those dry heaves, man, they're good, you know? Feel like your abdomen's coming out the throat any minute. Huh? Did you walk the floor and shake? Did your eyeballs shake a little bit? Huh? Jerk around in your head and you couldn't stop them? Not much fun, is it? Did you hear music and turn off the radio and it wasn't playing? Did you see those 3D Technicolor movie? A rat? Snake? Those of you who haven't, keep on drinking and drugging long enough, you will. People think that 3D and Technicolor were invented in Hollywood. They were not. I've got news for you, and I'm going to fill you in on it. Some drunk invented them when he was in BT. All right? And if you're really fortunate, you can fall down on the floor and jerk and see your tongue happen too. And you get up in the morning and you crawl into the John. God, how I hate. Crawl into it. God, can't walk. And carry up to it and slip your arms around it and void the shimmering waters, you know? And make a quick decision. My God, which ends will I put on spray? We all have made that decision, haven't we? Had you mirror? Now, after effect and side effect, put right into this, don't they? Pain. So isn't it funny? Isn't it ironic? The very thing that takes away pain produces more. But you know how to get relief from pain, don't you? You drink again. And if you want a very simple picture of addiction, there it is right there. You drink to relieve the pain, the result is more pain. When you drink again to relieve that, it's more pain, and you drink again to relieve that, and it's more pain. There's no answer. And you know what we spend our time doing? In between every two binges, we try to figure out how to get that effect, which is so valuable, without all those side effects and after effects. Don't we? And you know, we always come up with an answer. And we start telling ourselves the alcoholic and drug addict's lie. This time it's going to be different. This time, if I just handle it right, I'm going to be able to drink like everybody else. And we do it again. Okay? Valuable. Now, these problems we stated up here, do they just come up out of nowhere? What's your name? Yeah. Yeah. Do the problems just come up out of nowhere? Do you just get angry all of a sudden, guilty all of a sudden, feel sorry for yourself all of a sudden? No, you don't, do you? So those problems are not what's wrong with it. They're symptoms of what is wrong with it. Where do they come from? Now, let me get down to it with you. We're all kinds of people in this room. Tall, short, fat, slim, educated, uneducated, women, men, black, different religion. Okay? All these things. And we're different. And we live in a society that stresses our differentness, our uniqueness, our individuality. Am I right? I'm going to take a different tack. Did you know that we're the same? Did you know that regardless of your age or your sex or your religious preference, or where you came from, or how educated you are, or how rich or poor you are, that your alcoholism is exactly like my alcoholism, that inside of us there's not an ounce of difference? Think about it. I'll tell you what I mean. Because one of the lies we tell ourselves, you see, is I'm different. When I get that bad, I'll quit. You know, when I'm on Skid Row, I quit. An alcoholic is a person who drinks too much too long. You know, real drug addicts are laying back in the attic somewhere with a needle in their arm. And if I ever get that bad, I'll quit. I am different. Well, you're not different. An alcoholic is an alcoholic like a rose is a road, and a drug addict is a drug addict like a rose is a road. Because the problem is inside, folks. It's an internal problem, not out there. Rich people have it and poor people have it. You know that. All kinds of people have it, but it's the same problem, just like appendicitis is the same problem. Now, what is it interested to like? Let me suggest a few things and see if you can agree. I'll describe myself. I'm an idealist. Are there any idealists out there? You know, it was like I came into this world knowing how this world ought to be. And I knew how the people in it ought to be, and I knew how I ought to be. And I looked around me, and the world wasn't, and they sure weren't, and I wasn't either. And I got so hung up on what I thought I ought to be, I didn't have time to be. Any of you feel that way? And I was raised as a little man. Tommy, you're a little man. Little men don't cry. Little men don't lie. Little men are never afraid. Well, I had 3 problems going, you see. Because I lied and I cried and I was afraid. But when my parents, the big people in my life, would ask me if I was afraid, what would I say? No. Look back on your dishonesty. Most of us think we get dishonest after we start using. I got dishonest shortly after I started talking. It seemed like the thing to do. So we're hung up on ought to, you know? Ought to. I seldom use that word anymore. Ought's a bad word. Suppose is a bad word. Obligation, duty. What I do for fun and for free, okay? Not because I got to. But I am an idealist still. Okay? I am also a perfectionist, and I'm going to abbreviate that. Are there any perfectionists out there? Everything's got to be just right at any given time, or it makes me awful nervous or angry. You know? I put a crooked picture on the wall. I cannot stand it. I go in my doctor's office and straighten up in magazines, folks. Do you do that? Do you demand perfection of those you relate to? And do you get uncomfortable when they're not perfect? Do you always go for the top of the heap? In your job, are you the best one? I'll bet you are. Or you're going to get there. First place, spotlight, approval, pat on the back. Never second place. And tell me now, when you're not the best in your own mind, do you feel like you're the worst? Huh? That's the way a protectionist lives, like a yo-yo. Best, worst, best, worst. It'll kill you. It will absolutely kill you. And when things are not the way you want them to be, what do? You try to change them. If it's a person, you try to change that person. If it's a situation, you try to change that situation. And the ugly thing about perfectionism is even when you get it perfect, it's not right. Can you identify with that? I'm talking impact now. Okay. I'm everyone. I'm going to abbreviate this too. Hypersensitivity. I live on feelings for you. I don't live on thoughts. I live on actions and reactions based on my feelings. I always have. I'm a feeling person. For years, it was like I walked around with my feelings sticking out 50 yards in all directions, and people were always stepping on them. I was more sensitive than I ought to be. I heard a psychiatrist not long ago, and he said alcoholics and drug addicts are stimulus augmenters. You know, use one of those? I didn't either. I didn't know what it was, but I always ask questions after, sir, what is a stimulus augmenter? He said the person that makes mountains out of molehills. And it feels much more deeply than he or she ought to feel. I said, I knew that. I just didn't know how the stimulus augmenter. You know? Another psychologist told me alcoholics and drug addicts have a lot of cognitive dissonance. Did you know you had that? I didn't know what that was either. And I asked, what's their cognitive dissonance? And he said, it means you're always thinking what you don't want to think, and you can't ever think what you do want to think, and you're always being and doing what you don't want to be and do, and you can't ever seem to be and do what you want to be. And I said, I knew that too. You know? I just didn't know it was cognitive dissonance. Now, when your family comes in here for treatment, don't tell them I told you yet. But if they say, what is wrong with you? Say, I'm a stimulus augmenter with lots of cognitive dissonance, and don't you upset me. As you really want to wow, I'm telling what Dr. Harry Tebow said about it. We're alcoholics and drug addicts. He said a characteristic of it. There's a narcissistic, egocentric core dominated by feelings of omnipotence, intent at all costs on maintaining its own inner integrity. Blow your family's mind. Don't play loud. Telling I thought I was drinking too much, but I found out what's really wrong, you know? Hypersensitive. And there. I'm a romantic. Any romantic out there? Dreamer. Fantasize. Roughed off life from you. Huh? You love atmosphere. All the things. Yeah. Dreaming all the time. You know what I dreamed about? What am I going to be when I grow up? You know what I fantasized about? Being somebody else, someplace else, doing something else with somebody else. And saying to myself, why'd I have to be me? And why'd I have to be here? And why'd I have to be with them? And why'd I have to be doing this? There's got to be something better. And I got into books, you know, and I read about King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. And I used to sit and wonder, and this is the truth, why couldn't I be Sir Galahad? You know? And ride that white horse and ride up to the castle, you know, and put the lance out, and a beautiful maiden comes out and put the kerchief on the end, and I ride off and kill dragons. Why couldn't I do that? I'm going to say even my dream couldn't work. I knew what I'd do in my britches for a dragon I ever saw. And I found out all the great gunfighters in the West once. I found out they didn't have black hair, black mustaches, and dark. There's a great killer in the West. Shut me up if you don't believe it. Had blonde hair and blue eyes. Look at me. And I told myself, why can't I be John Wesley Hardin? Matter of fact, why couldn't I be anybody except who I am? I don't like me. Don't go. I don't like me. And we all got a piece of crying music, you know. We walk in the bar and everybody's the hat of the sleeves and the rapper. We walk over to the jukebox, play the saddest song on it. Why is it we do that? And each of us have a certain song that we listen to. It's our crying song, and we drink and play it over and over and over and over and over again, don't we, Jen? Huh? Put in some Hank Williams stuff you want to cry. Ooh, get through it. Get your bottle, you know, and a Hank Williams record and sit down and listen to things like Hear That Lonesome Whippoorwill. He sounds too blue to fly. The midnight train is whining low. I'm so lonesome I could cry, and by God you do. And you play that record again. Before it's out of the last groove, you put it back in the first groove. Glenn from Roll Down Dirty Blues to Muddy Waters. Muddy Waters, good crying music. Good crying music. One thing, baby, I just can't understand. Why you can't be satisfied with just one man. Tell me, baby, and tell me true, how can you love me and my best friend too? I'd rather drink Muddy Waters. Sleep in a holly log. God, that's a good get-down song. Take another drink, you know, and tell it again. And my particular song was a thing by the Four Freshmen, okay? Some freshmen. Some of you may not remember the Four Freshmen, okay? But they sang this song, and it was called Their Hearts Were Full of Spring. And it's the song that I listened to. There was a story told of a very gentle boy and the girl who wore his ring. Through the wintry snow, their love remained still warm, for their hearts were full of spring. Isn't that pretty? But what I loved was the chorus. Then one day they died. And their graves lay side by side on the hill that robin sings. And they so violent, throw there the whole year round. Their hearts were full of spring. And God, I'd cry and take another drink and play it again. I was 9 years sober, and I found that old record and started to play it, and my wife went into hysterics. Honest to God, don't play it, don't play it. And I was a little pain. You know, the connection. And we dream, don't we? God, we dream. We tell you a story about dreamers. Any winos and winettes in here? Or a story told by these two winos, and they were, man, but you know, winos don't wake up in the morning. I don't know if y'all knew that. Winos shook two. And they shook two under this bridge, and one of them turned to the other one and said, man, I had the best dream I ever had in my life last night. He said, well, what'd you dream? He said, I dreamed my mama called me home, gave me $25, and told me to go spend the whole day at doing the man. And the other wino said, did you go? He said, yeah, I went. I had the best time I ever had in my life. Said I saw Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Goofy. I rode all the rides, looked at all the music, went to all the shows, saw all the pretty girls. Other wino punched him and said, that's nothing. I had a better drink than that. He said, oh, well, what'd you drink? He said, man, I dreamed I had a luxury apartment. 2 cases of Jack Daniels. So they came and knocked on my door, and the 2 most beautiful women you ever saw in your life came through the door and started taking their clothes off. And the other wino was caught up in his story, and he said, why didn't you carry me? He said, I did, but your mama told me you was at Birdie Land. Always drink. I'm talking about character. Lots of people talk about personality. Personality is the outer self. It's the self you see. It's the self that's obvious. It's the role that I play, the mask that I wear. It may or may not show you what I really am, and you know that as well as I do. But character is what I am inside. You see how we like? And I put that up to that list, folks, because I felt what you felt. I felt what you felt, and my attitudes have been your attitudes and your. Now, is that character the problem? Let me tell you something. Some of the greatest human beings who ever walked the face of the earth had that character. Can you see Lao Tzu up there? Can you see the Buddha? Can you see Jesus? Can you see Abe Lincoln? Can you see Martin Luther King? Can you see Joan of Arc? Yes, you can. But character's not the problem. We got a beautiful character. But somehow it can. But problem. Let me look down a little bit. I got a psychiatric friend. I know about 3 sane psychiatrists in the whole world, and this is one of them, okay? You know what he said? He says, characteristic of every unhealthy person I've ever met in my life is that he or she has an ego that is not submitted to anything or anyone higher than itself. We say it again. Characteristic of every unhealthy person I have ever met is that he or she has an ego that is not submitted to anything or anyone higher. Another one said, people get sick because they assume they have power they do not have. That sounds ethereal way out, doesn't it? So many times have you said to yourself, I'll quit drinking this stuff on my own. I'll quit drinking for the last thing I ever do. I'll use successfully this time. Did you? Then if you didn't, were you not assuming you had power you did not have? Yes, you were. Okay? And the Buddha said, you want too much for yourself. And because you want too much, you hurt a lot. And he said the answer is real simple. Quit wanting so much, quit hurting so much. And Jesus says you love yourself too much. That's your problem. You are self-centered. That's hard, isn't it? And again, let me say, none of us want it to become that way. But if you want to find out how self-centered you are for the rest of the day, check yourself out. How many times do you say the word I versus the number of times you say the word we or you? So what these guys are saying is that ego is the problem. I'm going to draw you a picture of your mind up here for just a minute. Didn't that look like that, didn't it? Then did you know your mind looked like that? I always thought mine was full of holes, but that's I'm just a model I'm drawing up there for you because I want to show you what happened. Okay? Now, part of that mind is conscious. And it's referred to as ego. Ego is my consciousness of being individual, separate, unique, okay, apart from everybody else, an entity. Okay? Ego means simply I. Do you know how much of your mind is really conscious? If this whole room were your mind, about that much would be conscious. All the rest is unconscious. Think about that. And in the conscious mind, which we usually think of as some kind of computer that spits out answers, there's a lot of things. In the conscious mind is a whole set of values, things that are important to us. A whole set of beliefs, our opinions about what's true and good and real. That's what beliefs are. A window that we look out at the world and find opinions about what we see, and it's called perception. And a whole pattern of feeling, and a whole storehouse full of memory. And yeah, we have a computer. It's called the intellect, the thinker. And we have a fusor, which is called the will. Do you ever think something's wrong with your will? Huh? The will is the ability to choose what you're going to do and do it. Do you ever tell yourself, I'm going to drink successfully this time and try it and couldn't do it? Now, the ego has a job to do. The ego is the manager of the mental company. Do you understand that? And it's the ego's job to bring me pleasure and protect me from pain. And it's also the ego's job to protect everything that is valuable to me. One thing that is valuable to me, I said, is alcohol. Another thing that's valuable to me is that ideal image, what I think I ought to be. Okay? I will get back in a minute. Let's go to the unconscious mind. According to Carl Jung, the psychiatrist, the unconscious mind is divided into two parts. One part he called the personal unconscious, and I call it the basement. And you'll find out why in a minute. What do you put in your basement? One word. Junk. You put junk in the basement in your house, you put junk in the basement of your mind. Make no mistake about it. But the ego does not want to become conscious. It shoves into the basement and keeps it there. There's another part in the unconscious mind, and Jung called it the collective unconscious, and I call it the knower. Do you know there's a part of you and me, John, that knows things we've never experienced? We know there's a part of you and me, Mickey, that contains wisdom and experience which has been passed along to us from our ancestors in the form of chemical codes in our brains. That we know things that we've never experienced. Found out? You ever go into a strange town, you've never been there before, but you knew where every building was going to be? Huh? You ever pass when you're driving down the road a certain scene and you say, I've been to that scene before, but you've never been there before? Ever sit down in a conversation with a friend and you knew what the whole conversation was going to be? Ever listen to a piece of music you never heard before, hear two notes, sing an old song? Huh? Ever take a walk in the woods, dark of night, and you walk in a straight line and all of a sudden you're walking out, and you don't know why. And you go back in the morning, and there's a big gaping hole there you were falling in, something like that. You ever get the feeling you're being protected? Huh? Believe it. And there's a part of you that knows where to turn. Think back to that last drunk when you were coming off of it and you were shaking and hurting and puking. Did you hear a voice coming out of you saying, God, oh God, please help me? Yeah, you did. And so did I. There's a part of me that knows where to turn in times of trouble. It's automatic. Think about these things. We're something. You don't believe that, but we're something. It's like the psalmist said, I will praise thee, O Lord, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Now, if I were a Christian, I would call the knower the Christ. If I were a Jew, I'd call it the divine spark within me. If I were a Buddhist, I'd call the knower the Atman, the Great Spirit. If I were a psychologist, I'd call it the integrating cores of personality. And whatever it is, it's powerful. You understand what I'm saying? And it's wise. And yeah, in the knower is where the power is. And I'm sorry if you can't see this. I'm using up the board. And it's also where intelligence is. And Ginger, with intelligence that I'm talking about, intelligence is this. I can recognize what's good for me and what's not, based on my past experience. Okay? Now, when you can't recognize what's good for you and do it and what's bad for you and not do it, that's what I call insanity. Think about your drinking and drugging. When you were able to recognize what was good for you and do it, and bad for you and not? Or did you keep going back to the very thing that was killing you and ruining your life over and over again, telling yourself, it ain't going to kill me. It might kill them, it won't kill me. Now, we protect the ideal image. Kenneth's ideal image, I'm going to pick on him for a minute, is macho man. Very smart, courageous, never afraid. Yeah? That's what he ought to be, and he's always believed that. And see, the ego took orders. But one day, he's afraid. And a friend to him said to him, are you afraid? What does he say? No. Where do you think the feeling of fear goes? Right into the basement. Through what the psychologists call ego defense mechanism, rationalization, projection, denial, all these things. I'm not getting into that. The feeling is shoved into the basement. And he remembered many times he'd been less than courageous. And he thinks many fearful thoughts. And there's a lot that he doesn't know. But what does the ego do? It judges all the things that don't support the image into his basement. And that is the truth. How old are you? 21 years of junk in his basement. You know what I'm saying? 21 years of junk, baby. And some days he walks around and he's so mad and he can't stand it. And you ask him what he's mad about, and if he tells you the truth, he says, I have no idea. And he walked around and he's guilty as he can be. And he's done nothing to be guilty about. Do you ever feel that way? And he's depressed and there's no reason for it. Do you ever feel that way? Because when you shove these feelings and thoughts and memory into the basement, you lose control of them. And you might bury them, but they're not buried dead. They are buried alive. They create a lot of pain. Okay. Which demands relief. Can you see it? Can you see it? If you have these characteristics, you live in the world we live in, you're going to feel these things. And if you shove those things into the basement, the pain will get so intense that you feel like you're going to explode any minute, and you have no idea why you feel like you do. You just need relief. But more important than that, you know, you cut yourself off from the power. You cut yourself off from power, and you cut yourself off from intelligence. And you can't recognize what's good for you, Ginger, and do it, and what's bad for you, and not. All right? And you can't seem to make an agreement with yourself and keep it. You can't do it. What's different? Am I talking psychiatric problem here? I am not. I'm talking spiritual problem. Power is, was, and always will be a spiritual concept. And so will it. So you see, we're getting down to it now. Spiritual problem. I don't have the power to be what I meant to be and do what I meant to do. I know, I tried. I don't like it, but I don't. So the ego shuts us off from what it ought not to shut us off from. And what more, when the ego gets in that position, what happens is not only do we try to put all the bad things out of our mind about ourselves, we try to put them out of our minds about other people. We try to control them, make them into what we think they're at to be. How about alcohol and drugs? Value the book. You ever had the experience of coming off one, and you're sick and you're hurting, and when you're saying, I'll never do that again. And you mean it, don't you? I'll never do that again. You know? And when you start feeling well, feeling better, you know? And what's happening while you're feeling better is all the bad thoughts and memories and feelings about that last binge are deliberately shoved into the basement out of consciousness, so that 5 to 7 days later, you know what you're saying? This time it's going to be different. This time I think I can drink successfully. Now, if I'm lying to you, I'm dying. And it actually happens. Don't forget it. In many ways, my greatest enemies when I was an active alcoholic were health and success. When things got good, that was there. Because when things got good, the little monkey would jump up on my shoulder and say to me, hey, you don't need to go that meat. That's for a bad lunch. You're not that. And when the alarm clock would go off, the monkey would pop up and say, sleep 15 more minutes, not you're up 2 hours late for work. And the monkey never shows his head while you're hurting, just when you're feeling good. Think back on your own drinking. But there was a problem. I worked through a problem. If there was a crisis, I'd work through the crisis. Then, when everything was okay, is when I'd do it. Because it didn't like me, Ginger. I threw it out of my house. Alcohol didn't do it. I did it. Bottom line, I hated my guts. I was not what I ought to be. I was not perfect. I was extremely sensitive to that. You see, it had nothing to do with drinking or running. The spiritual power. Now, I'm not going to totally give up the answer to your problem without suggesting a solution. I am not here to shuck and jive. I want you to know that. I am not here to tell you to do anything I have not already done. I am not here to suggest to you that you believe anything that I don't believe, and you better put that in the bank. Because I got a fatal disease and I do not want to die. And you got one and I do not want you to die. What I want is for you to understand what is really wrong and quit playing games. No shrink can fix you. Not because they're poor, bad people, but because they can't fix you. They don't have the power. No wife, no husband, no son can fix you. They don't have the power. No minister can fix you. They don't have the power. Who got the power? Go ahead and say it. You know it, but no one knows it. God's got the power. Am I right? Whoever or whatever he or she is, they have the power. And if what Young told us is true, part of that power is in us. And we're running all over the place looking for it. And there it is, closer to us than our next breath. And the great spiritual preachers have said, don't look for the kingdom of heaven in Jerusalem or on the mountain over here or yonder. The kingdom of heaven is right in the middle of you. My God, what have you been looking for? So next session when we get together, let's go into a solution to this problem. Because there is one. There really is. Okay? Any questions at this point? So the problem with Sue is not the character. It is that the character is under the control of I. And as long as my character, being what it is under the control of I am going to self-destruct. Okay. The ego, the manager of the company, is acting like it's chairman of the board. You know what I'm saying? It has gotten inflated, and that's our basic problem. Our ego is bigger than it ought to be. Doesn't mean we're in love with ourselves. You think about people with a big ego, oh, he's conceited. He's in love with himself. I never was in love with myself. But there's an opposite end to that. I sure was in hate with myself.